Ever wanted to paint hair that was alive and sentient? This is your chance. Look, I know it's style study week, but I have a very heavy work schedule this week for non-YouTube related stuff, so please have another iconic video. I promise I'll make it up to you soon. That said, however, today we are going to tackle one of the most complicated parts of painting a character, and that is painting hair. More specifically, we're going to tackle the more semi-realistic fantasy anime type hair that is all the rage on the Instagram art community. And whom better to learn from than an actual Instagram artist who's been blowing up recently. Today we're going to take a look at painting semi-realistic hair in the style of Lydia Elaine, better known by her Instagram name Lotusbubble. While there is a lot to learn from her art in general, today I kind of want to focus on that super vibrant, flowy, dynamic hair and how she paints that effect. As someone whose default is to paint realism, this is going to be as big a challenge for me as it is for you. And if you do learn something from this video today, then please do let me know by giving it a big thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button because there's more videos coming every single week. Alrighty, let's take a look at painting iconic hair in the style of Lotusbubble. Lydia Elaine, also known by her Instagram name Lotusbubble, is a freelance character designer from the US. Though there isn't very much personal info about her online, Lydia shares her work very regularly on Instagram, where she's garnered over 327,000 followers, and understandably so, seeing as her characters appear cute and edgy at the same time, which is a rare combination. And like I said in the intro, there is a lot to learn from her art in general, but today I want to focus on how she paints hair, because let's be honest, we could all use another hair tutorial or 12. And today we're actually going to work on this beautiful character I designed over on Patreon this month. We went through a whole series on designing an original stylized character from scratch, and last Friday we put together a proper concept, which is what you're looking at right now. I figured we might as well just give her some super cool hair. Alrighty, let's dive in. When you look at Lydia's work, you'll notice that while the character itself is still, there is still a lot of movement in the composition purely because of the hair. Generally speaking, we tend to treat hair as an accessory that you kind of add on to the painting at some point. However, when you look at Lydia's art, you'll see that she treats the hair as if it is an active component in the scene, almost like it is a sentient being of its own. So the hair doesn't just flow in the wind or get dragged down by gravity, it has weight and gumption and holds its own against the rest of the scene. The majority of her characters tend to have fairly curly or wavy hair, but even if she does paint straight hair, it has a ton of fluidity and the ends of it seem to curl up, creating a very strong silhouette. So we're gonna start sketching in a super strong silhouette, keeping in mind that this character has a couple of braids but nothing too complex. We want the hair to look inherently dynamic rather than make it look complicated and heavily styled. One thing I noticed is that she almost treats the hair as if it were pineapple leaves. Look, I couldn't find a better analogy because you see how pineapple leaves kind of have a thin but firm density and overlap to create almost like a layering effect, and how they're quite broad at the base but end in a pointy tip. That's kind of the effect you'll see in Lydia's paintings, where the hair, rather than acting as strands, acts like flat planar groups, at least for the bulk of it. And just like the pineapple leaf, while the root of the hair bundle is quite thick, it almost bulges out some more before starting to taper. We want to create a very detailed sketch and actually do a second cleaner iteration because we're actually going to keep the sketch in our final painting. One other thing to bear in mind while sketching is that Lydia almost always puts rounded curves adjacent to a sharper angle. So if you have a very round curl, the curl next to it will actually have a soft angle. I think this really pushes the cute but edgy vibe and just adds a lot more interest in the line work. So with all of the sketching done, here's what we have after step 1. Alrighty, as you can see, I've gone ahead and painted most of the rest of this character, and you can catch the speed paint for that on Patreon if you like, but let's start to throw in all the rendering and dimension in the hair. One thing I noticed in a lot of her work is that Lydia actually does a lot of rendering in grayscale before using curves to add color. So we're gonna see if we can give that a go for the hair today. Like I said, we're gonna try and preserve the line art as best we can, so I'm actually gonna go ahead and create a new layer for the hair and paint a flat silhouette to begin with using a dark mid-tony grey. Any further hair rendering that we do today we can clip to this layer, and that way it'll all stay within the lines. First thing we're gonna do is place in our darkest shadows. Why? Because it's Scorpio season. The darkest shadows are usually at the very top of the head where the hair is kind of parted, and then down below the jaw where you have ambient occlusion and drop shadow from the face. Alright, let's step up a few tones and do our slightly lighter shadows. This is where that pineapple leaf analogy really shines, because we want to place shadows under each little flat hair bundle as if the leaves were kind of layering on top of each other. I like using a flat hard-edged brush for the entirety of step 2, and since we're working with hard shapes rather than hair strands, we can really get away with being very flat with our tones. One other place you'll find some even lighter shadow tones is where the section of hair kind of starts to cinch together underneath that widest bulge of each section. Like I mentioned in step 1, you'll see that a lot of these hair sections, they tend to kind of widen out from the root before tapering to a point, right? So you want to place a shadow tone right under the widest part. It will make sense in just a second. Where possible, I'm gonna keep the darkest bits at the very edges and have the shadow kind of fade out into the middle of the hair bundle. Next, we're gonna grab a highlight tone and start to add some shine. For this, I'm actually gonna use a brush that has a flat, hard-edged alpha but no angle jitter. It'll give you this cool, almost calligraphy type effect. We're gonna place highlights at the widest part of each hair bundle. Generally speaking, this is gonna be around the crown of the head as well as the center of each little curl. This is going to give us that 3D effect, and when you put these highlights right next to that dark shadow that we just painted, it creates this super glossy look which just makes the hair look really healthy and bouncy. And once we're happy with the shadows, we're going to use curve adjustments to give her hair some color. For the most part, this character was inspired by the Lunar Moth, which has a pale, almost pistachio green, iridescent type color. So we're gonna mess around with the green and blue curves for the most part, keeping it fairly light and pale so we don't get like a neon green look. And finally, we're gonna paint over the hair so far with colors picked from our rendering. If you want to get rid of the line art, this is the time to do it. I also like to flatten what's remaining of the line art onto the rendered layer and then go over it and do one more refined pass, blending it into the rendering. So with all of the majority of the rendering done, here's what we have after step 2. When it comes to finishing up the hair, there are 3 important details that I noticed in Lydia's work. The first is the super bright specular highlight that, for lack of a more perfect analogy, makes me think of the Hyundai logo. So like a curvy H shape where you have longer ends that kind of curve into a very skinny middle. This will generally be of a tone complementary to the majority of the hair, generally a very cool tone since Lydia tends to paint a lot of warm colors in the hair. However, since the majority of our hair here is cooler tones, we're actually going to aim for a red orangey highlight. Be very sparing with this. You want to paint very tiny specks right in the middle of some of the major highlights. I feel like this really pushes the already super glossy appearance, taking it to an almost metallic level of shine. The second detail is this glow around the outer edges of the hair, particularly the very tips. Lydia generally paints the ends to be relatively dark, even if the character does have blonde hair. She then places a bright glow around said dark ends, sometimes even extending it into a defined rim light. This usually creates a very solid contrast, further pushing the silhouette, and it kind of forces your viewers to really focus on the character, no matter how detailed or complex the background may be. When it comes to picking a color for this glow, however, Lydia often actually selects a pair of complementary colors, and you'll see that if one half of the hair has a diffused orange glow, the other half will have a more defined blue glow / rim light. Here, since we already have a bit of blue and green and red, I'm actually going to go purple and yellow for the glow, just to make everything super vibrant. I'm going to paint this in a layer underneath the actual hair, so we're not accidentally painting over any of that rendering that we've done so far. However, when it comes to the rim light, obviously that's going to go over top of the rendering that we've done. I'm focusing the brightness specifically around the darkest areas at the outer edge of the hair, just so it creates a very solid contrast. And the final step, which is my personal favorite when it comes to painting hair, is adding stray hairs. You just grab a line art pencil or narrow chalk brush and flick out some strands. I think I just used the same exact sketch pen brush that I've been using this whole time. Bonus point if you flick out some dark strands into the glow that we've painted, it just really pushes the silhouette. However, I noticed that a lot of the times Lydia paints most of the paler strands to frame the face, particularly if they pass through some of the specular highlights. Make sure you have short and long stray hair, because that way we're really pushing the dynamism. And just to be extra, I'm gonna go through and add a little bit of hair texture here and there, maybe even some sparkles to really push the magic. I then went ahead and rendered every other detail on this painting and played with some lighting effects, and here is our finished painting for today. Am I gonna forever paint hair in grayscale and use curves to add color to it? Honestly, if I can remember to do it, I most probably will. And you can totally extrapolate this to painting anything else that's in your scene, so go nuts. If you guys have enjoyed this video and learned something from today, then please do let me know by giving it a big thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button down below. If by any chance you haven't checked out Lydia's art before, I will leave a link to her Instagram down in the description, which by the way is something I do every single time. So if you've discovered a new artist from a style study or a technique tryout or an iconic video, I will leave a link to that page in the video description every single time, so make sure you check that out. If you'd like to support me personally, then come check out my Patreon. I have a link in the video description to that as well. Come check out all the extra content that goes on there every single week. Alrighty you guys, I am so excited for you guys to see what I've got lined up for December, so thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. Check out some more iconic videos up here. I'll make sure to leave a playlist in the outro, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye! Am I gonna forever paint hair and get gay scale?